from the Department of Justice. Pennsylvania man charged with making threats to assault and murder President Donald J. Trump, other U.S. officials, and immigrations and customs enforcement agents. Now, the crazy thing is, they don't mention Elon Musk in that because the guy literally called for others to do the same. They say Sean Monper, 32, a resident of Butler, Pennsylvania. Crazy, right? Has been charged by federal criminal complaint with making threats to assault and murder President Donald J. Trump, other U.S. officials, and U.S. immigration and customs enforcement agents. Quote, I want to applaud the outstanding and courageous investigative work of the FBI and the Butler Township Police Department, who thankfully identified and apprehended this individual before he could carry out his threats against President Trump's life and the lives of other innocent Americans, said Pam Bondi. Rest assured that whenever and wherever threats of assassination or mass violence occur, the Department of Justice will find, arrest, and prosecute the suspect to the fullest extent of the law and seek the maximum appropriate punishment. Acting Attorney Troy Rivetti for the Western District of Pennsylvania joined Attorney General Bondi at making today's announcement. Now, they're going to give examples of what he said. I'm not going to read them. But he basically says on February 17th on YouTube, he calls for the left to start committing acts of murder, targeting Trump and Elon, Trump's agencies. He says, we are the majority, MAGA is the minority. And by the time they make their move, they will be weakened. He calls for American Revolution 2.0. On March 4th, he said he was going to do it himself. On March 18th, he called ICE terrorists and said people need to start ending their lives. And on April 1st, he says if he sees an armed ICE agent, he will consider them a terrorist and then he will take action against them. He's not the only person we've seen do this. There's another viral video where the guy was saying to people, telling them to attack, to shoot law enforcement.
Yeah, like the real estate agent guy.
That's right.
Yeah. What is in the water over there in Butler, Pennsylvania?
Well, they weren't all in Butler, Pennsylvania.
I'm saying, but like we've got now two going from Butler, Pennsylvania. Like every time we drive through there, now I'm going to have to wear a bulletproof vest every time we go through there.
Yeah, I think what's happening.
It's a nice town. It's not that bad. These guys aren't. They're not the whole thing.
I think the left is hyper radicalized and it's going to keep getting worse.
It's got to be weird to call for revolution while also saying we should ban guns, but at the same time, not really, because they actually want to do that, as we all know.
This is the free speech double-edged sword. The right is getting censored throughout Trump's first term and screams no more censorship. Now, Trump is president and the big platforms go, okay, you guys win. Okay, left, let her rip. And now the left is calling for murder, death, violence, escalating the conflict. And they're saying, but you said no censorship.
Was this the Mr. Satan guy?
This is Mr. Satan.
This is Mr. Satan.
And he said he was buying one gun per month now. I mean, that's also in there too. Like some of his posts say, I'm buying one gun per month and ammo. So he was escalating.
He says, I have been buying one gun every month since the election. And he went by the name Mr. Satan.
I saw the Church of Satan was going on a parade with a pride parade with LGBTQ groups today.
That's their thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mr. Satan could go hang out with the Church of Satan.
Should we ban these people?
I mean, no. And the reason no is so that way the government can pick them up for terroristic threats and put them in jail.
Can the government pick up enough people to stop the meme, the terrorism ice bucket challenge?
I don't know, but I think that the number of people that will get picked up for making remarks like this is, I mean, I think that when people see that you're actually getting arrested, people will stop doing it.
You think so? You think that
rational people will?
I think so. And you can never stop irrational people.
Right. And there's no way I'd be in favor of restricting speech beforehand. You've got to have the freedom to say things, even if they're unpalatable, even if they're improper, even if they're just something, until it rises to the action level where it's illegal, you need to be able to say it. So you
even
can't
this
put
stuff,
restrictions on it.
I don't. I think that it's good when people tell on themselves. People like this guy.
But we understand that. The question is, on the left, you have an ice bucket challenge escalation.
Are you saying censorship? Are you saying should the platforms censor them?
Yes.
Okay, that's what you're asking.
Right. So the question is not, obviously, anybody who breaks the law calling for an assassination, you arrest. We get it. But on the left, they have made it into a trend. Should the platforms deboost these things?
Deboost as in like shadow ban?
If you are advocating for violence but not breaking the law, you get boosted in the algorithm. And
what would be an example of that, of one that's advocating of advocating for violence but it doesn't
There's that viral video where the woman says, someone's got to do it. Why won't someone do it? Someone's got to do it over and over again.
That's up for the platforms. They can do that on their independent companies. They get to make the decision as to what they want to do. There's no guarantee for free speech on the internet. So if you want to have that as your platform and make your policy to throttle that kind of thing, you just need to, live with the consequences that'll have for your platform. I don't think that if say Instagram wants to have one level of throttling where if you go to this, we're not going to boost it, and X is another one, every company's going to have to set their own internal thing on that. And I don't have a problem with them doing it. I really don't, but I would tend to use platforms that have the widest amount of latitude and the most amount of viewpoints out there.
I feel like the issue we've had over the past 10 years is that the real concern people on the right had was that sanity was being banned and insanity was being protected. But in the process of trying to protect sanity, the right has called for the protection of insanity as well. So, for instance, the left advocates for violence. They build cultures around violence. They encourage others to do it and then say that's their free speech. They've been protected the whole time. But now that we're in this position where we're like, no, let everybody do it, the right is still in a position where they're saying, don't do these things, don't engage in this behavior, and the left is still getting slack. They're still getting a free pass. They've never been censored for escalating calls for violence or extremism. They're still not going to. I'm not saying I think the platform should ban people, but I am much to the point, I suppose, where I can recognize if you allow the left to expand and organize on ideas of murder, violence, and terror, you will get it. So the left made that argument of the right. The problem with their argument was that they were talking about Ben Shapiro. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure Ben is like the argument I made is, do you think you would ever see Dave Rubin marching on Berkeley with torches and crowbars and a bunch of, classical liberals? Never going to happen. No. So when they argued that Rubin should be censored, that Carl Benjamin should be censored, I should be censored because we're escalating this rhetoric, that it wasn't true. They were lying. They actually are doing that, as we can see now with this arrest, with all of the other things. So I can certainly understand the argument of the principle, we're not going to shut down their speech. If they want to advocate for murder, they can, so long as they don't create an imminent threat and state that they intend to do it. That's the line, right? As long as we recognize that will foment a large escalation, a large population growing and being influenced by those memes, that will become reality.
So yeah, I mean, I think that, especially when you're articulating it like this, I think that it's we let them speak. When they break the law or they make threats, you pick them up. And if they do organize, right, and they say, okay, we're going to actually do something, well, they're breaking the law too. So then they can actually get into kinetic fights with the government then.
But I'm not referring to, again, one person crossing the line. I'm referring to 3,000 people showing up and burning down Minneapolis.
That's why I said then they can get into a kinetic fight with the government.
Right,
but let them, because like this is a conversation that we had before. If there is going to be a confrontation with the government, let the confrontation with the government be by the left when the right is in control of the government. That's my take.
When the far left rioted across this country, law enforcement did nothing.
Okay, well, that should not be the case. I mean, these are all hypotheticals that we're talking about, but this is my take on it is we should not change the policy of free speech in order to protect people that want to be, or, by banning them, you're just putting them underground. Let them speak. When they break the law, let them face the law.
The left could not get away with the summer of love again, like they did in 2020.
I think they
could do that again. They could try those tactics. They would not be as successful and free from prosecution as they were.
I mean, I think they were doing that in blue cities. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah, I don't agree.
Like if they go to Minneapolis, they're going to do the same thing, and Trump.
But you're going to see, you'll see the National Guard come out sooner. You will see a much more telescoped, response time from the administration. If you had that degree of rioting that we had post George Floyd again in our country, they wouldn't let it go on as long as it did back then.
Well, why do you think that?
Because he's not running for re-election.
Yeah, but there's going to be an election with somebody.
There's going to be an election, but it's not the person. It's not the person making the call. It's not an election year, and it's not the same person up for election. You've got much wider latitude and much less patience, plus the lessons have been learned, and that's really the biggest thing. The lessons have been learned. We benefited nothing by allowing them to run roughshod over our communities, by allowing them to burn down entire swaths of neighborhoods. We didn't get any benefit from allowing them to do that. All we got was disastrous consequences. So if that same thing comes up again today or in the near future, they're just not going to let it go on as long. There's just no way.
So you're saying, speaking solely of like federal intervention on the level of, if this is happening at a state level, in a state level case, right? They're burning down Minneapolis, they're burning down San Francisco, and Trump, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but in 2020 when this happened, he offered help to these cities and they all rejected it. And what I would imagine is the same thing would happen this time around, unless you're saying that he would just simply force through federalized help.
Look, we've got how many arcane laws are we that are laws? So they're not like new laws, but we've got like alien sedition, and we got all these things that are on the books, and they will find the justification to use federal troops if there's some form of disorder in the United States, and it's appropriate to do so.
Do you think that's what would happen?
I don't know for sure that that's what would happen, but I would probably endorse it. Look, they should have called out the National Guard during the Summer of Love in multiple cities. I would advocate for like the Earth Crisis song Firestorm, street by street, block by block. We're taking it all back, wrap those dudes up and get them off the streets.
And the states rejected the help, and he didn't want to seem as if he was overstepping because he was up for re-election, right? But the thing is if you're going into 2028, and right now, I mean, I don't know, it's too early to tell, but if you're talking Vance being your front runner to run for office in 2028, he's still second in command of that administration, and that will bring up questions during those events. Again, this is all hypothetical.
To the extent that Vance will be involved in that, yes, but the American public, I think, is not going to be determining, if something happens in the next 6 months, that's not going to be the deciding issue for 2028.
Okay.
But
midterms would be sooner than 2028.
I do think there are a lot of people that would look back at the Summer of Love and say, we're not doing that again.
100% agree.
I really do, because people feel like they were lied to a lot, because they were lied to, especially around that time. They remember the COVID stuff and they were like, that turned out to be BS, blah, blah, blah. I don't think people are as forgiving of those kind of behaviors anymore.
BLM turned out to be a complete lie.
Yeah.
I don't know
BLM,
if I buy.
Forget it.
I don't know if I buy that big cities, big blue cities, have learned their lesson. I don't.
I'd agree with you there, but
which is where this was happening.
And then you have the issue of like, is there a Democratic governor in the state? So on a state-by-state basis, you're 100% right. Democrat controlled would be slower to respond, but I believe that the federal government would respond quicker and not necessarily wait for, the governments to governors to say, come help us.
Then let the people of those cities deal with the repercussions of not having a functioning government. And if the people are okay with it, hey. You self-government, man. You can have a burnt down husk of a city. You can make your city like Detroit had been for decades. Because
or Minneapolis rebuilding itself.
Yeah, like everybody left. If you don't have law and order that protects property, you lose in people do not invest, people don't start businesses, and you end up with a husk of a city. You lose your tax base, the whole city falls apart. If that's what the cities in this country want to do, be my guest. It's not my place to say that you must do something.
I mean, maybe I'm just not paying as close of attention, but I just don't feel like those big cities that are in those liberal strongholds have learned their lesson. At least it doesn't feel that way.
That's okay. Yeah. That's okay. They get to make those decisions. And when people say, I'm out of here, it happened in 2020 and it happened again 5 years later. I'm not putting up with this stuff. I'm leaving. I'm moving. Look at the amount of people that left New York City, or that left New York State, that left California and moved to Texas and moved to Florida. Florida's not going to tolerate that. You're not going to see that happening in Tampa.
Well, yeah,
You're not going to see that happening in Texas either. So the point that I'm making is the people in those places, if the city doesn't respond and protect the property and the rights of the peaceful people, they will continue to leave just like they did just like so many people did after 2020.
And I think the other thing too is that if you look at what happened in 2020, you had Democratic governors and mayors just saying like, okay, we're going to let this go so long because they wanted Trump to intervene. They wanted him to become the bad man and have to call in the troops. They wanted to create that situation. So I think in some cases, they probably let things go even further than they were comfortable with because they wanted to create that reaction. President Trump wisely didn't give it to them. Okay. And I think that if that same set of circumstances and that same level of civil unrest, not even civil unrest, criminal activity, let's call it what it was. That's what it was. If that happened again today, you would see a different response pattern. It would be vastly different and it'd be much quicker.
Governments and cities have a responsibility to protect the peaceful people and protect property. And if they don't want to, who are we to say, that you can't? But I don't think that we should say, hey, we need to censor what people say on the internet because it could escalate to terrible things. We shouldn't censor because we should use the internet as a means to wrap up people that would do nefarious things. If you're out there, if you're involved in criminal conspiracy, like Tim's talking about, criminal conspiracy to do things like escalate into violence, there are laws against that. Let them speak and let them get arrested. Take them off the streets.
But again, the point is not that individual people will decide to break the law. It's that 50,000 young people would be dumping buckets of ice water on their head if not for these platforms. Now 50,000 people will be going out and throwing bricks through windows.
Like I said, that's criminal
What's wrong
conspiracy.
with bricks? Bring bricks into this.
No. When bricks are placed into a wall, we're very fond of them.
Correct. We just don't like pallets of them on the street.
My question is about the shifting narrative from dump a bucket of ice over your head and do a dance. And what these young kids used to do was dance. I remember I saw some like preteen girl. I was driving down the road and she's in the middle of the street with a phone like propped in the street, and she was dancing in the middle of the street in a suburban neighborhood. This was in Jersey. And I'm just like, what is going on? And my friend was like, oh, it's a TikTok thing. And I was like, what is this? That used to be the trend. Now the trend is read the Osama bin Laden letter. Now the trend is advocate for murder, death, and assassination.
Well, let me ask you this, Tim.
Maybe it's just a problem of TikTok.
That's a whole separate thing. I agree.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.